Good morning. Thank you everyone for making the effort to be here. It's been a super busy couple of weeks with Ad Week and the DPAA Summit. This is a really good crowd for a morning. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you to eMarketer for hosting us in this amazing space. A lot going on in the industry, like I said, lots of conferences and innovation and evolution. We want to spend time today talking about one of the shifts that we are most excited about, which is the demand for every channel, every medium to be more accountable, more measurable, and to truly drive real outcomes. So digital out of home is one of those places. Obviously, out of home has been around for a long time, traditionally high impact brand awareness, but with technology, we have been able to make it something that has moved down funnel and something that is more measurable and attributable. So excited to have that conversation today. At GroundTruth, we are obsessed with real business results, so driving real business outcomes for our brands, for our advertisers, for our agency partners. And every time we bring a new product to market, it is to be able to add it to that mix for that mission. Last time we were in this room, we were talking about audio and how we've done that with audio. And today we're excited to talk about that in the digital out-of-home space. So first we're going to kick off with a presentation from Jeremy from eMarketer, give us like a deep dive start on digital out-of-home as an industry, and then we'll have a group discussion and answer some questions. So thank you.
Hello, everybody. Very excited to talk to you today. I don't have to talk into that because I have a lav mic, so what am I doing here? I wanted to just very quickly tell you, so digital out of home, we're going to talk a lot about that, going to cover a lot of ground. Another thing that I did, which people really love behind the scenes, they love when you add slides at the last second. This is me this morning taking a picture of this just because I thought it was so engaging, and I thought, oh wow, you know, maybe I should get to this event. Let me see if I can scan the QR code. And then I ran after it and I tried to take a better picture of it. It was a worse picture, as you can see, but I did get in trouble with the building security for jumping on top of something to try to take it. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, just a few things that I want to cover with you all today. The state of out of home. You cannot talk about, obviously, digital out of home without looking at out of home in general and how it's gone through this transformation. Also, obviously, looking a little bit at digital's overall importance, what it does well. A few quick high-level case studies. I think we've all seen a few examples like the thing I just showed right here a second ago. Levers for continued growth. You know, like what are the things that are going to be important for digital to grow over the next few years? And then the next few years, and frankly, like the tariff-induced anxieties of the current moment that we're talking right now, even before we talk about 2026 and 2027. So, just a little bit of data, you know, as you probably know, but if not, you're at eMarketer right now, where we basically use our trusted forecasts and insights to let people know, you know, the state of the market. And we also obviously rely on a lot of third-party sources as well, just to kind of check and validate everything that we put out there. So US out-of-home ad spend went past basically $9 billion according to our forecast. The OAAA, a lot of other places say, for the first time last year, we believe that total out-of-home spend should get to around $10.5 billion in the US by 2028. And then we'll talk a little bit more about digital out of home in a minute or two. But that is rising, you know, that's not actually like a bad number. I think 8.6% is relatively competitive with a number of other channels that are talked about much more often than digital out of home. Now, when you think about digital billboards and how important they are to the overall out-of-home picture, they make up about a third of out-of-home's overall revenues in the US. There are some markets like China where that penetration is far greater, like 70%, close to that. So we can see there's a lot of opportunity for growth there. And then just the fact that you see a lot of dynamicism and these data-driven formats that are pulling in a lot of information that people don't really think about. You know, when you think about a digital billboard, you're like, oh, it's a billboard. but it's a screen, and it can be swapped out in terms of creative. But actually, there are a lot of different things that can be done with it, based off of contextual data, traffic data, weather data, that makes it a really exciting area to follow. Another key thing that I think is really interesting to look at, we follow privacy trends and what people are very curious about and where their anxieties are in terms of their data being used. I think that obviously you see concerns about brand safety and suitability control for ads. That's one thing that's clearly really important, but people are really curious about ethical use of data. Obviously, one of the nice things about digital out-of-home is that you can use contextual cues without relying on any one individual's data, because it is a one-to-many medium, right? Just a quote from Advertising Week. I know we were just talking about that. Spoke to a lot of people in the industry about their excitement about digital out-of-home. And again, this idea about one-to-many, not one-to-one. Personalization at a one-to-one level is great. It doesn't have to be like that in every single channel all the time. You can have a mass message and reach a lot of people in a compelling way through digital out-of-home. So, just talking a little bit about why out-of-home is having this resurgence overall thanks to digital. Clearly, digital out-of-home, that is the main growth driver right now for all of out-of-home. If you're looking at this specific forecast, you can see kind of like how big this is going to be growing. Obviously, we see that the next 2 years are going to be a little bit better growth, tapering off a bit as the overall market matures, right? Which we see in pretty much every single market that we cover. But again, these data-driven and flexible formats that also can do attribution and measurement in a way that a lot of people didn't really think was possible. That's one of the things that keeps this area continually growing and getting more and more investment each year. Another key component is show of hands. How many people still actually shop in actual grocery stores? Anybody else? Okay, cool. Right, okay, great. So one Instacart user here. So basically, one of the interesting things is that when you think about in-store retail media, which is a subset of digital out-of-home, that's a major area of investment. It's a major area of growth. Now, you can obviously look at this and say, great growth, but off of a very small base, and you would be completely right. But one of the key things that's great about this is that you know so much about somebody based off of where you're putting that screen within a retail environment. And I think that that's very exciting. It's not necessarily about how many dollars are going in. It's about the ROI that those dollars are generating. And frankly, part of why we've seen more and more growth in this area is because people are just very excited about the returns on their investment. Just a few quick examples. I think we see a lot of these, but this was a campaign that AstraZeneca did. A number of other pharma marketers have found, and we covered this actually in our daily briefings product, that pharma marketers are expanding out of home to reach patients before the actual visit, to inspire them to call their doctor about a new medication, about a new procedure. And I think that this is the key thing, is about the contextual relevance and capturing people's attention at the right time that makes out of home really work well in a situation like this. Now, it is important, and we'll talk a little bit about the headwinds and tailwinds. This is something where we've seen some data that shows that not necessarily every consumer sees this as the most trustworthy healthcare ad format, but that's okay because it reinforces other channels. You're not investing in digital out of home in a vacuum, right? You're adding on to some other spends, and they work really nicely together. Another thing that we covered in our briefings was Valley Bank's Fifth Avenue branch implemented a major campaign using digital signage to drive awareness and foot traffic. And they were able to report higher walk-ins and stronger community recognition, especially among younger audiences, which is one of the things that they were trying to do. And this is, to me, a very interesting thing to observe is, we just think, well, people are just looking down at their phones as they're walking all the time. And that's true, but you might walk into somebody, and then once you do, you look up and you see a digital campaign like this, and it really resonates with you. I think that, again, these are like the levers for continued growth for out-of-home and digital out-of-home in particular. In order to continue growing, these are things that it does well, but it also has the opportunity to improve, and there are a lot of major players that are working on these things. It's evolving into more of a full funnel performance channel, which means, for years, everybody was saying it's great for brand awareness, but does it actually drive outcomes? And there's been a lot of improvement in that regard. If you look here, you can see that this is one study about looking at things like purchase intent and brand favorability. So you actually see that this, I would say, goes against some of that stereotyping that out-of-home has had to deal with for years, that it's good at the top of the funnel. The issue all along, I would argue, is that nobody was great at looking at the bottom of the funnel and looking at measurement and trying to say, how can we actually attribute sales to this channel? And I think that the industry is getting better at that. Another quick chart that I really like that I made yesterday, actually, for an article. This is specifically tied to sporting, but for sporting events, driving word of mouth. This is one of those things where if you can get, it's the reason why influencer marketing has attracted so much spend over the last few years. It's simply because of the fact that word of mouth is great, and an influencer is like your best friend. That's the closest thing to actually speaking to our friends. And the ability to have an out-of-home campaign that inspires somebody to have a conversation is huge. Now, another lever for continued growth is out-of-home and CTV will continue to blend and merge. There's a lot of out-of-home TV that happens right now in areas like bars tied to, I know it's football season. I'm not a football fan, but I'm sure many of you are. And you go to a bar and you watch, and what's interesting is that captures attention. And then generally adjacent to that TV, there is some out-of-home signage. There's more and more digital out-of-home that is being implemented in those types of environments. You see here, obviously, in terms of billboards, right now, this is probably a shocker to nobody, that billboards are the lion's share of overall out-of-home ad spending, and we're expecting that number to probably drop just because we see a lot more opportunity in place-based. A lot of that is tied with in-store retail media. You're definitely going to see a lot more from a transit perspective as well. We spoke to a number of people during advertising week who said that there's major investments being made in infrastructure to support things like the Olympics. And when you have something like that, how do you fund it? You fund it with monetizing those surfaces. And those are new surfaces, and those are going to be place-based, those are going to be transit, and that's going to be a major opportunity for digital out-of-home to really pop for people. And I think this is something that we really, shame on me for not mentioning any earlier, but the idea of programmatic buying versus these major backroom deals, that are made through IOs, that's something that's changing very dramatically. We've seen more and more major programmatic partnerships where you can buy this type of inventory programmatically, which just means a lot more efficiently. You can buy something and then you can take down that spend when you see that campaign B is outperforming campaign A. You can quickly pivot. That's the kind of flexibility that I think that a lot of people have been craving for from this format. Digital display obviously was a lot quicker to the game in terms of programmatic, and digital out-of-home is just by looking at the fact that it's growing at 22.6% for programmatic, that's over twice the growth rate that digital out-of-home has overall. And then, so I think just to talk about some of the friction, looking a little bit at the tailwinds versus the headwinds. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the privacy-safe component of out-of-home in relation to a lot of other formats. The ability to work across the funnel, I think, is obviously really impactful. the expansion into new formats and adjacent formats like CTV and retail media, that is obviously going to be huge. So all of these things are really great, and that's why we believe that that number is going to keep going up. It's going to keep getting a greater share of overall out-of-home dollars. But some of the headwinds, obviously, it's important to acknowledge. There are some challenges tied to audience precision. There's, of course, people are making major inroads there, but if you look at measurement gaps, they do exist. And in fairness, I have to say that there are measurement gaps with CTV and other things that are growing at pretty fast clips, but it's still right to call it out here. There are some trust hurdles in areas like healthcare that I pointed out. So again, worth noticing that and just kind of factoring that in when people are deciding what their spend should look like. But yeah, I do think that looking at the overall barrier to entry, this is again another quote from Advertising Week, the idea that we can take these formats that they feel exclusive to everybody who grew up looking at a giant billboard in Times Square and saying, wow, that looks amazing. I wish my brand could be up there. A lot of advertisers still feel that way, but it was kind of out of reach. And the fact that that is going to be more and more within reach to major advertisers, I think there's no reason to think that it doesn't become a much more competitive channel, especially when you look at how well it performs when paired with other types of ad spending. So what do we see over the short term when we're looking at out of home? Okay, so it is true that there are tighter budgets. There's definitely, especially if we're talking about Q4, a lot of people are focused on the short term, what's going to drive the most actions, right? You have a lot of retailers and CPGs. That's when they know that they're going to make a lion's share of their sales for the year. So Q4 isn't necessarily the area where you would expect out of home to necessarily pop. But moving forward, it does have that ability to measure, to have that measurable impact with the storytelling that you don't necessarily get from a digital display ad that is, 4 inches on your screen and you quickly scroll past. I think that all the advertisers that I've spoken to recently, I've intentionally asked them questions about digital out of home, knowing that this was coming up. And one of the things that kept on being echoed to me is that, if the ROAS, if the return on ad spend is there, then we will continually invest in this channel. But if it's not there, it just becomes a little bit easier to cut, and it's something that I have to justify because I believe in it. And I think that that's a key thing, is that the major advertisers believe that this is a channel that's going to complement their other channels really nicely. And then just on the horizon, what do we see going forward? Again, we're expecting that digital out of home will continually grow and become a larger part of overall out of home. There's going to be more and more deeper integration with CTV and retail media. Again, measurement innovation, linking exposure to mobile commerce and foot traffic is going to help close the attribution gap a little bit. There's still work to be done. And out of home, we believe, is going to keep evolving from a medium that brands, buy, but I think the fact that it can be essentially a place where you can build your brand platform and cut through the clutter. There are a lot of times where you're trying to tell your brand story, and it's very difficult these days, and this is one of those rare canvases where you're actually able to in a way that you're not able to in a lot of other spots. So just a few key takeaways, just repeating a few major components of this. I do think programmatic is one of the things to watch. I think that looking at the convergence of, out of home, so that basically out of home becomes everything and starts eating all these other surfaces that we didn't necessarily expect to see out of home advertising. You will start to see more of that, and I think it's going to be great. I'm okay with it. And just ultimately, it's a major backdrop for awareness, and becoming a measurable layer of the overall marketing mix is one of the keys to digital out-of-home success over the next few years. And I think that's it. So thank you all. Hello, everybody. Haven't seen you all in a while. So I think maybe
It looked just like you.
it was a deep fake.
Oh.
So yeah. So maybe let me just do very quick introductions, and actually I'll kick it over to you, Rosie, first, and maybe we can go this direction. And then I have a lot of questions for you all. So if you want to start off.
Great, yes. I realize I always forget to introduce myself, so I forgot that part this morning. It's early. I'm so happy to do it now. My name is Rosie O'Meara. I am CEO at GroundTruth. I've been at GroundTruth 6 years last week, and in this role for about 18 months now. So nice to see everybody.
Hi everyone, I'm Dave. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Place Exchange. We are an SSP purely for out of home. And I've been there for 7 years. I was one of the founding partners there, so it's nice to be with you all today.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt. I work with Rosie at GroundTruth. I'm CTO. Been at GroundTruth for 4.5 years, I think. I've lost track. So much fun, time flies.
Hi, I'm Barry Fry. I run the Global Digital Out-of-Home Trade Organization, and we had a little party yesterday for about 900 people. That shows the interest in what you were talking about there, Jeremy. And Rosie is a proud board member of ours, and also Dave is. And it's great to see about half of you again. I guess half of you were there yesterday.
So yeah, I want to kick off with a few different questions. Give everybody a little bit of an opportunity to get in there, but maybe just start out with Rosie. Okay, so big news, GroundTruth getting into digital out of home. I'm wondering, maybe you could talk about like the timing, right? Like why did GroundTruth decide this was the moment for digital out of home?
Yeah, of course. So as I mentioned, we are all about real business results for our brands. We're an omnichannel ad platform. We work with agencies, brands of all sizes, clients of all sizes. So it always starts when we do something new in innovation with customer demand, with our clients asking for something. And I think digital out of home has become one of those things. I think the last couple of years, Barry knows this better than anybody, the out of home space has really benefited from the convergence of like people out in the world again in full force and wanting in-person experiences and the digital innovation on that medium, right? So it's become a place where our customers were asking us for it. The next question we ask ourselves is, can we actually add value to that medium? Like, let's not just sell search because we can sell search and we want that budget, right? How can we actually add value to something and not just be another player in a crowded space? So that took us some time, took us a couple years to say, how can we use our location-based audiences in a meaningful way? How can we use our omni-channel approach to make that another piece of the puzzle? How can we use our deterministic attribution models to add to digital out of home? So once those things were true, it made sense for us to get into. And then finally, one of the priorities at GroundTruth too is to be able to bring products to as many types of clients as possible and to have broad-based availability, right? Something that you mentioned was, how could we like democratize these channels that really felt like the smaller brands and the smaller clients really couldn't play in those spaces? And because digital out of home is now one of those things, it made sense for us to do because we could make it available broadly for the biggest brands we work with all the way down to the SMBs that we love just as much.
Yeah, it's a really interesting moment with the evolution for sure. Maybe Dave and then Rosie, I'm also curious your perspective here. What role do you see digital out of home playing in the future of omni-channel campaigns? Because I didn't have all the time in the world, but I really want to talk more about that, about how it reinforces other channels, right? I mean, we've seen digital out of home evolve from brand building to a lot more, performance-based media.
Yeah, and I think, the vast majority of campaigns that run through our platform, 85% of them are via omnichannel marketers, so digital buyers, where out of home is one medium alongside other mediums. And you're right, traditionally speaking, you think about out of home as the brand building medium, and of course it does that. But we are seeing the role it plays and the contributions it makes in the vast majority of the campaigns that we run are being measured. Out of home is playing a much bigger game. As you said, it's just not being attributed. And I think that's partly because it shares some similarities with audio and CTV in as much as the ads aren't clickable, and there's no cookies. And when the ad plays, often more than one people are seeing it. And I suppose that's harder, but the good news is, people like GroundTruth and others are finding ways to measure those media and the contributions they make.
What he said.
Okay, so then how, looking ahead more specifically, do you see digital out of home complementing and growing alongside CTV, social media, all these other channels? Is there a way that they can live and kind of like add value to one another?
We have a big omnichannel study that we do every year. We do it in the US, UK, and Canada, and every year it shows increasingly numbers of more omnichannel budgets coming to fund, to your point, the digital out of home world. We show that people are basically, it's coming out of video budgets, coming out of digital budgets, and out of home budgets, of course, too. But every year we see a complete increase, and we should maybe send you that report. It's chock full of data.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Add me on LinkedIn after this. Okay. So
I would just on the video piece. You showed a slide there that said 80% of spend is on billboards in the US today, and I think that's absolutely right. But from a programmatic standpoint, through our platform, billboards account for about 40%, slightly less than 40%. The fastest growing part of what we do in terms of revenue is video ads. And if you look at the ecosystem, there's this new wave of supply coming on, which is video in public spaces. You mentioned it before, bars and restaurants. Places that are playing television to an audience who are watching it in sort of communal public space. And I think that's probably the route in from a CTV standpoint, particularly if you're passing back signals around content and things like this. That seems to be where all of this is going and how it can play a role. 20% of American people who are going to watch the FIFA World Cup are going to watch it in a bar, as an example. So that's a huge part of the audience if you're trying to have a video strategy that reaches fans of the World Cup in this case. I think that's a huge part of the audience you're not reaching unless you're advertising in these places.
There's so much power in video. Our summit yesterday is called the Video Everywhere Summit for just that reason. And we actually had a very robust panel on digital out of home as well as CTV, and how they work very well together to drive customer demand and to drive activity. And there's not a customer, a consumer, or a brand that doesn't get up every day and say, I love video, I love the power of video. And now that we're putting it on the customer journey, on their path to purchase, and increasingly more at the point of purchase, you can't deny the power of video. You can't deny the power of the screens. And what it does for the commercials is that you actually now have content surrounding it. So you mentioned news, data, weather, entertainment, that drives people to engage more with the ads as well. It's a bit of a television model, so that's why we are seeing digital and video budgets moving, especially in programmatic, where yes, the billboard business is still a large part of it, but the growth is happening in digital and video. And interestingly, and I talked about this yesterday too, a lot of the executives we have in the industry now, in fact, a new CEO of Outfront, $2 billion ad company, comes from running agencies, comes from digital, and we're seeing a lot more talent come into the space that is going to help drive that forward.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. Matt, maybe I can start with you and then throw it to everybody. I want to get you in here. The idea of measurement and attribution, I talked a lot about it in part because, I think that that's one of the things where it's just easier to get more and more dollars if you're an advertiser if you can prove that it's working. Not a genius idea, but it's true. So that's always been a little bit of a sticking point for digital out of home. So what's changed recently that's making it more measurable, and where do the biggest challenges remain? I'm sure Dave will want to get in on that also.
I think the change for us was, like Rosie said, we have to focus on, before we bring a channel into market, how do we make it measurable? How do we do attribution? Can we? Right? So we spend a lot of time testing, figuring out how to connect the pipes to actually understand that we can do that. Through the integration with Place Exchange, we took really a tried and true technology, we call it blueprints, and applied it to the screens that are available in that inventory. So a blueprint is kind of a virtual polygon around a place of business, a storefront, a grocery store, a bar, or you watch the World Cup, for example, and we can intersect those screens that are in the inventory with those locations. So we understand through that direct integration if there was a viewer of that screen when the ad was playing. We can use that viewership for audience building, retargeting, and in these kinds of clickless environments like Dave talks about, when you slide from screen to screen, it becomes one to many and even one to one. So we can address these audiences across multiple screens, and DOOH just becomes a part of the bigger mix.
And I think, as we all know, by the way, there's a difference between kind of like, what does privacy safe even mean? It's ultimately up to each advertiser to decide, but do people generally say like, oh, this feels like creepy? Because when I explain it to the average consumer, they're always like, oh, I didn't even know that happens, but it makes a lot of sense and they're fine with it.
Yeah, I think people are used to it now, right? Like the ad formats are different, but the brand messaging is similar, and I think it just speaks to that like larger power of targeted advertising. Where I saw something in a bar, maybe I'm there to watch the game, that resonates with me, and so why wouldn't it resonate on my phone? And I think it's natural. But you think of the extension of the real world, these screens out in physical spaces. You can do the types of things cross-channel that you would have maybe only imagined doing with households, right? So that extension of kind of the physical world out to that audience, that targeted audience, I think becomes really powerful with out of home now.
You can really tell the story as you're traveling with the consumer, and consumers love stories. In fact, the way we communicate as humans. The fellow who built 60 Minutes at one time was the largest rated show on television. And it was probably getting about a third of viewership on a Sunday night. When they asked him when he retired, what was the success of 60 Minutes? And he said, they said, was it the reporting, the reporters? Was it the news stories? Was it the conviction you had? And he said, no, I gave Americans just a few words, 4 words. Tell me a story. And that's what we as humans connect to. So you can now travel that message from the web to connected TV, from the home to outside the home, and then right up until I mentioned the point of purchase. By the way, the retail business is so key for all of us here. WPP is talking about this year being a $180 billion business, retail media, A. But B, only about maybe less than 1% or half of 1% of that actually takes place in physical stores or near physical stores, yet that's where 85 to 90%, depending on the country, of purchases take place. So what a huge opportunity for the growth of digital out of home.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on measurement before we jump on?
Well, just on that privacy thing, I think there is something sort of implicit about the idea of an ad appearing to a number of people rather than one person that feels, whilst it might be targeted and relevant, sort of anonymized in a way. I mean, there's a few out-of-home media owners in the room today, and literally I've seen one of their ads, at least one of their ads on my walk here this morning. But it wasn't just me, I saw an out front urban panel, a subway entrance, I saw a Firefly ad just outside, Captivate in the elevator as well. I think I've even seen some in window, Adam, this morning. But it wasn't just me, it was a few people. And I think even had that been...
creepy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the benefit of out of home.
At the same time, that also helps in a positive way, in addition to ameliorating in a negative way, in that it's a shared experience.
Yep.
And back to what humans love is experiences. And when you're sharing that, it feels only not less creepy, but hey, this is kind of great. We're seeing this, and then it gets expanded on social, which supercharges it.
And as we heard at Barry's get together yesterday, out of home is the most trusted digital medium.
Right.
And I think that trust is important to kind of keep leaning into and make sure that we don't betray that trust.
I think on the attribution point, back to your question, the piece that we feel like we're adding value to in a significant way is, yes, several people saw it. Who did it land with? Who did it resonate with? And how did that show up in a store visit, right? Or some real world outcome, real business result, so to speak. And then what we can do is help the brands that we're advertising find more of those people, right? Which ones within that wider market did it resonate with? And now let's double down into those audiences because those are the ones that converted. I think that is the piece that we're starting to figure out as an industry to add that layer of attribution, which turns into efficiency, which reduces waste, which makes the brands spend their money in wiser ways, which is really what we're all trying to do
You
here.
make a great point. People talked about, you know, measurement and impression measurement in this business. How does it coordinate with other media? But measurement of that site is really a proxy for outcomes, for results.
Yep.
I mean, people want the data you deliver. People want to know there's brand lift. People want to know there's brand moving off the shelf. People want to know that there's engagement.
That it
You know,
worked.
people want to know all of this stuff, and that's what brands really grow upon. It's not just, you know, 18 to 24 is at a certain time in a certain place. In fact, you know what's interesting? I thought about this when we talked about it. Does it work or not work? And you guys do a great job, especially deterministically, of making it show that it works. If you think back when Nielsen went from program measurement to commercial measurement, you know, the measure, you know, the hour show or the half-hour show, and then they shifted everything to commercial measurement and just the breaks. The ratings went really low, and it was going to be a whole, you know that, it was going to be a dastardly whole break on the whole network television business. But what ended up happening is that, yes, people ended up spending what seemed like higher CPMs because they were paying the same for the commercial break because the outcomes always worked before that. So while the impressions and the measurement changed, advertisers kind of got smart and said, wait, it was working for me before, I'm still going to pay the same thing even though it's telling me there's less impressions. So it's about outcomes, which you guys do great.
Which I definitely wanted to ask about that, especially from a technical standpoint. When we're thinking about outcomes, you know, Matt, maybe a good place to start with you, obviously, because you just worked on all this. What does it take to connect a digital out-of-home impression to an in-store visit? Because that, I think we just live in a world where somebody just says you can do this really complex thing, and we're like, okay, cool. That seems really hard.
So yeah, I mentioned earlier blueprints, right? So we've got about 12 million storefronts blueprinted across the United States. Just about every retail establishment blueprinted. So we thought, how could we apply that technology to screens? So we're able to virtually blueprint essentially a digital viewshed of the screens in their physical location, and then the technology works quite similar to how it works today, which is as we're seeing device IDs pass in front of screens at a certain time through the Place Exchange integration, we can see exact timestamps on when those visits happened or visits to view sheds happened, and that's how we create the audience building and find the adjacent audience to the in-store visit also. So it's you know, it's a existing technology that we've retooled essentially for digital out-of-home to get to that performance, to get to that measurement step. Ultimately, that result of an in-store visit is a proxy for a sale. That's the closest we can get to a sale to know that that actually drove some outcome. So that's how it works, kind of technically under the hood. There's a lot of noise we have to filter out. You know, these mediums are in very busy places, so we have to filter out high-speed traffic. If it's a smaller screen, like an urban panel. If it's a larger screen, that high-speed traffic's probably good because it was a highway side road sign. We've also got capabilities in place to filter out what we call time travel. So if we see a device ID in one spot, and then 3 seconds later we see it a mile away, that's obviously, you know, some kind of erratic signal, so we throw that away. So a lot of filtration. We boil it all down to about 220 million visits a day across all of our blueprints, but we throw away a lot of kind of erratic signal that we see in the ecosystem.
And the one thing I tried to dispel a little bit was the idea of like, oh, you can't get any like good reporting from digital out of it. It's getting so much more sophisticated. So how granular, you know, can you get in terms of the reporting for digital out of home?
It's actually very similar to the type of reporting you'd see for a digital campaign. So impressions, reach, frequency. If you've got visitation enabled, we can show you visitation rate, so VR. We can break down visits by venue, by audience, by screen. So you know, we've worked a lot around what does an omnichannel report look like, so that the report you're used to seeing today for digital media looks very similar with your digital out-of-home buy. There's nothing new to learn. The capabilities are the same. The reporting should be the same.
So any sense there's not great measurement is overly stated.
Well, that's why I'm trying to serve up
Right.
to you guys. I think there's a lot of things we're just trying to dispel
Sure.
today, right?
When we set out, our whole MO was to try and make the physical world look and behave like the online world. And so that meant, no extra hops, no extra steps. And so sending the exact metadata through in the same time period, in the same place, that was kind of table stakes for us. And it's awesome that, GroundTruth take that even further on behalf of their brands.
Yeah, I mean, in our platform, everything needs to talk to each other. Everything needs to look similar. It's not they're not all exactly the same KPIs for every single channel, but you need to get the sense with the platform in a dashboard without having to piece together 10 different reports what the campaign did, how the campaign worked. So the more that we can all be speaking the same language and start to unify some of those metrics across screens, that's one of the goals too.
Do you have anybody that you work with who's come to you and says like, okay, this is what I need from an attribution standpoint in order to get like great insights? I imagine you had those conversations as you started this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly unique requests. Some of my sales team is in the audience now and knows what those are. And we also built actually an insights platform for that very reason. So not only can you see efficacy of a campaign, you can also learn things you maybe didn't know about your customers. Maybe where they over-index in residential zip codes, or what other stores they go to before and after, where they live or work, what their other affinities are, demographics you may not have thought of that you can, again, double down on. So we have an insights dashboard, actually also an API version of it for clients that want to go deeper and get smarter and then take all of the data, as you can imagine, that we have and are sitting on and turn it into something actionable and understandable.
That's I think a really good point is also the ability to inform product and strategy as a company. That's something we didn't even cover, but I feel like there's definitely an opportunity there now.
Right, instead of just what creative do you have? Okay, here's your channels, right? The creative barrier has gone away to a large degree because of AI tools, so you don't have to just buy whatever creative you have or buy the channels for which you have creative. You can think about what really is the right mix of screens, of channels, of mediums that are right for that initiative.
And you could also create creative. I mean, now because we have this great medium now that has video that is on the journey of consumers. So I haven't slept in 3 days at my big event. Oh my God, we had one 2 nights ago and I had one last night, and then I actually emceed all day and danced with the Michael Jackson group from Broadway on our stage. But outside of that, it is a great canvas for creatives and agencies to paint on now, because you can utilize different, and then add to that QR codes. The ability to, what you talked about, is have a full funnel meeting. You could get a great creative that talks about the brand, and you can go right down to touching, feeling, understanding, and actually accessing or purchasing the brand by a QR code. So it is becoming a fast, full funnel meeting.
I was actually talking to one of my fellow analysts before about time spent with media and how investments don't always line up in relation to how much time you've spent with that media. So given that, I'm sure you've all had conversations with people who are maybe under-investing in digital out-of-home in relation to time spent with it, as well as the return on ad spend, right? So what are the biggest barriers to those advertisers fully embracing digital out-of-home from those conversations that you all have?
I mean, certainly some of the education that you were talking about of what is really possible with digital out-of-home versus what the understanding in the market was, that it's for billboards on the highway and not measurable. So I think education is one. I think it's also, I was out there back in the day with a couple of people in this room trying to get people to understand that mobile was a thing. And, people are going to use this. And it took a while for ad spend to catch up with consumption. And how there's so much more time being spent before the ad spend catches up and before everyone goes, oh, wait, the media buyer goes, oh, actually, I use my phone a lot, right? Or like, I notice billboards, I notice digital screens out in the world. So I think it's just a natural dynamic of our industry that consumer time spent goes first and ad spend starts to catch up. But I think the more we can even educate on that front, like, look, there's all these eyes here. And by the way, it's not overly saturated yet. You can be one of the first. You can be one of the ones to capitalize on it, and, before it gets more expensive because there's more demand, right? Like, you can just tell that story more, that people are there, the audience is there. This is gonna be like CTV was. This is gonna be like mobile was. This is something you just can't deny for too much
Rosie,
longer.
you're absolutely right. I'd say two key things: education and inertia. And it just takes humans time to get
Yep.
to where they need to go. And we spend a lot of our time working with hundreds of brands a year, hundreds of senior agency folks with press and others. And we do this at Cannes Lions, at Possible. We do this at CES and DMexco in Germany. And it's a lot about education and helping people understand what is really there. There's a great Churchill quote that leadership, which we try to copy, is about understanding where people need to go and enabling them to get there. And we know where they need to go, and we help them get there. And I've done this, it's kind of been, for better or worse, a lot of my career. I was on sales calls, just myself and Ted Turner in the early days when there were no cable TV budgets. And we would walk into agencies and they'd say, "Hi, Barry and Ted. Ted, nice to meet you. Can you sign the cover of Time magazine?" "Barry, what are you doing here?" But it was a wonderful time of really taking people to help them understand a new medium and how to take advantage of it that consumers were already. So we would actually go to the brands. And as an example, where the agencies were accumulating rating points, the brands wanted to sell Toyotas, and they realized in those days that there were 40 channels that Toyota was Toyota consumers and drivers were watching, but the advertisers were on 3 or 4. So it is always inertia, and our role at DPAA globally is to educate brands and agencies as to the opportunity, and creatives and everybody in the chain.
Yeah.
One of the greatest things, and you see it happen all the time, is when a digital buyer who hasn't bought out of home as part of an omnichannel plan before buys it, and then they see it in the wild.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Like it's so different, without being disparaging to any other form of medium, it's so different when you see it within the context of the real world, and sometimes it has the ability to stop you in your stride, but it always happens. Someone hasn't done it, it's the education happens, and then they're like, wow, I want to do more of this. There's a real sort of visceral connection between the buyer and the
Part of that's
experience.
what's so great is the power of fame of out of home. When you see something out there, it's in the public, so it's got a great juice to it.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how easy it is now too with place exchange. Like what you're doing is again like democratizing something that felt like a big investment, a big barrier to entry. I don't think people realize how easy it is and how similar the experience of buying it is to buying digital. So I think once you can like unlock that just experience, it will open up
Well,
to
as
you.
somebody who bought programmatic in 2019 for out of home, and and it was easy enough for me as a small agency at the time to be able to do that. And then I'm amazed at, again, like you said, the education that I think has to be done for that opportunity. But then I think that brings me to my last question, and then I know we'll take some questions from all of you. This whole entire like supply side innovation that you can buy, there's going to be more services, you can buy it programmatically. I think this is going to obviously unlock a lot of scale. What are some of the challenges that you all feel tied to that? Because I do think we have to be kind of cognizant of, I don't know, brand safety concerns, or does the ad quality go down, things
Putting
like
a screen
that.
on everything. Like, what else can we put a screen on?
Our outfits will be out of home
Totally.
at some point. Yeah. But in all seriousness, it's like, is that something that you're all kind of like what do we need to do to make sure that digital out of home keeps growing at a sustainable, positive way?
Well, you mentioned scale up there in your chart. You're going to see more M&A deals done in 2026. That helps. Programmatic answers the scale question quite readily. Those are two issues that again, and then we're attracting as an industry more cash. There's a big Solomon event going on right now where a lot of companies are talking about putting more cash into it. We have some members I was with last night from the Gulf region that are plowing money into this industry, and so it's cash, it's investment, it's scale driven by programmatic, scale driven by M&A work. I think those are some of the things that will help growth. And if you look at it, and you pointed this out, digital out of home is the driver of out of home, and programmatic is the fast driver of digital out of home. Yeah.
It's I'm not just saying it because I'm surrounded by two
They're
ground
not-
truthers.
You can
they're
say
not
it.
here.
But,
They're not
but,
here.
but it is. I mean, when a new DSP comes, particularly a smart one who's kind of data forward, it's a giant leap forward for our industry because it opens the lens, the opportunity for more buyers to see the way it works in different ways and access it. It's a huge step forward, and I think Rose said it before about it's actually much easier to buy. I think one of the brilliant things about out of home is it's evolved so quickly, and you do have screens in all of these different environments. And I think the creative challenge has always been something like, oh, do I have to create 200 bits of creative here? And that's not the case. You know, for the most part, it's like 7 different creatives, and you can run across everything. But these are moments where you just feel the whole industry lurching forwards in a sort of massive step change. So, yeah, it's a really like important time for our industry right now with GroundTruth stepping in, I think.
Thank you, GroundTruth.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's great.
But I love those time travels. I want to talk to you more about how people get, miles down the road by lying.
Yeah, we throw those out.
It does not involve a DeLorean or a flux capacitor.
It's great as you spot those and kick them out.
Well, I know we're close to time, so I feel like this is a great time to kind of thank you all, but also don't go anywhere, because I'm sure we're going to have a whole bunch of great questions coming from the crowd. No pressure. So, thank you.
Boris, Publicis. My question is on the execution side, since we're working in an AI world with agentic coming in. What is our time to market for an idea on the ad that I can roll out on those screens? How fast can I change to the audience and target? What's the scale in this industry? Because when it was billboards, it was month. How it works now?
Yeah, I could take that. We just kind of left off on a question about the buying experience being really simple. One of the things we baked into the platform is the ability to, let's say, flip a creative you may already have from CTV to other screens. So you can search venues by creative size, by format. So you can say, okay, show me all the screens in this area that fit the creative I already have. So you don't need 17 pieces of creative, just 1 or maybe 2 or 3. From there, the campaign gets lit up just like any other digital campaign. It's about a 24-hour ramp time. There's an approval step on the creative for all the different publishers, but within 24 to 48 hours, the campaign's ramped. If you want to swap that creative out, our bidding system resets every 30 minutes. So you could have that creative swapped out, published out to the other screens within about an hour, depending on when it hits. So it's very quick. It's not the 30 days to like plaster the billboard anymore. You could buy a campaign and have it essentially ramped that night or the next day.
Similar to how digital.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly the same experience actually, yeah, in the platform, yep.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I mean, rolling out trucks and ladders and pulling it down and painting and plastering. It's a good question. Spasibo, Boris, what'd I say? Okay.
Yeah, so you would see impressions from that campaign within 24 to 48 hours, very quickly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Yue Liu, early stage startup, fairly new to the space. My question is, what's the pricing difference between different types of environment, and what's given the same environment over the recent years, has there been any trend in terms of going up, going down, right? And when I say different places, I mean in the store versus in some other public spaces, for example.
Well, certainly the smaller screens, and you guys do a great job of covering such a plethora of them, that increases. Retail media is largely increasing. We have a member, T-Mobile, that their job now is to put screens, advertising, and everything in every store, and they're working to put everything near store at the same time. So what you're seeing is probably the smaller screens, the more place-based screens, are rapidly increasing. And that's kind of where we grew up. We started as a digital place-based organization, and now we're the global digital out-of-home organization. But that's where you see the growth happening a lot. And then urban centers, same way, transit, whether it's bus shelters or near those areas, gyms, bars, restaurants, malls. I mean, we had our friends, where's Alex from Simon Malls? Where's Alex? Oh, right next to you, look at that. I mean, Simon is one of the prolific companies in putting screens every place and doing it in a very clever way. You're using holograms as well, and maybe some 3D soon.
Yeah, in terms of pricing, we publish insights of our platform twice a year, and CPMs hold steady, and in some cases have grown. Sort of counterintuitively, this is not a race to the bottom. And in many cases, I think for media owners, there's a few in here today, often the programmatic CPMs are higher. There are a range. So, there's a range for large format. I think if you're, Times Square, spectacular, they tend to be more expensive than roadside billboards. In-store, in-venue, place-based, a little bit less expensive. Most of it is less expensive than kind of comparisons with CTV and online display. So it's very affordable, you're getting great audiences, and yeah, CPMs are holding steady.
Although I do think you may see them going up. I think the industry, to what you were saying before, has not been marketed, has not overcome the inertia as much, and as planning groups and comms groups understand the real power of this medium, I think you will see CPMs go up, and as it should. Of course, now it's that's not a barrier to entry, and when it goes up, it'll mean that just people are really now seeing the value of this medium.
Hi. So programmatic is great. Walls come down, really easy to plan, execute buys. When do you anticipate, or is this happening, that advertisers are saying, where are my ads showing? Like, what is the quality of these impressions? Because I saw that in display media where it's like, oh, it's programmatic, it's out on the web. Fast forward a couple years, you're like, these are shitty websites these are on. So where do you think the quality discussion is going to come in, or is that happening now with the
totally.
brands?
You guys can fill in, but I think that's a natural evolution, right? There's like good, publishers, and then you see MFA happen, and then we have to filter that out, and so that's a natural sort of part of the evolution. We are doing things, and Matt and Dave can speak to this in terms of like screen level reporting, so where it's showing up, and there's more accountability for that. I think it's one of those things that will sort of naturally correct itself, because there'll be scores for better screens that work better, or are brand safe, or are more premium, and the rest of the stuff will probably just hopefully fall to the side when it's not monetizing, because it's not being scored well and no one wants to be there. But what would you add to that kind of more technically?
Well, not that I'm not going to answer anything technically, if that's okay.
Leave that to you.
So two things. When we onboard supply, right from the very beginning of Place Exchange, 6-7 years ago, we have something called PX Clear, which is this rigorous onboarding program. So we don't have any kind of MFA type inventory. Everything has been approved, looked at, et cetera, et cetera. The vast majority of campaigns that run through our platform are not open exchange, they're deal based. And so people are buying it purposely, they know what they're buying. In some cases, they're handpicking the displays, the environments. Often, as is the case when people buy it directly, we're sending photos, much to the hard work of the media owners we work with. So I do think already, that's not happening, it's not a thing, and we're working very hard to make sure it's not a thing. It's actually one of the things that we position ourselves as the antidote to.
And there's also the nature of the medium. There's two big factors of what the nature of the medium is. One is that it's a very finite group of screens. You just can't create another junk website and just put ads on it. That's one. And then also, they're out in public. And when you've got the sun shining on you, there's a limit to what you can do nefariously. And the sunlight brings out all those elements. So finite number of physical places, and then everything's in public, so there's a limit to you can't put clickbait really there. Because they'll get tomatoes thrown at it, municipalities will take it down, and people will complain. So it's very different than hiding in your basement and looking at some creepy website or something.
I think on the activation side, we baked in 2 points in the platform where you can really get an understanding of efficacy by screen. So first, in the reporting, we give you a breakdown of impressions and visits by venue. So is my visitation rate low in this venue versus that venue? You can pick and choose, retool the campaign. But even up front, before the buy, there's a planning tool, and it shows you all of the venues broken down. It gives you an idea of CPM and an idea of reach. So you've got the ability to plan before you even place the buy on better screens. We've also offered premium publishers. So if you're only interested in top choice screens from Outfront, Clear Channel, et cetera, you can choose those up front as well. So I actually think it's baked in from the beginning, unlike some of the latter issues that we saw in web and mobile. And it's good to see. It gives you a full idea of where those ads are going to land even before they land. And if you're seeing those venues not perform, you can tweak the campaign after the fact.
Right behind you is a premium executive from Premium Out Front, Neil Shapiro, right behind you. There you go.
You're good at making intros.
Yes,
so to
that's
say.
what we do.
Well, so one thing I'll actually quickly add to you, we're obviously a clearinghouse for data from a lot of third parties. If you were to look to see what percentage of overall digital display is basically MFA or MFA-like, in terms of where it's served, it is going to be far higher for the web than it is for out of home, because there's a lot of intentionality and contextual cues that let you put those in a place where it's essentially additive versus just trying to serve an impression to charge you.
I've been in the various marketplaces buying inventory, and it seems like a lot of the inventory in the shopping centers and malls is not programmatically addressable. What are your plans for increasing that? What are the issues you've encountered in trying to onboard and get more inventory and supply up and programmatically addressable? It feels much more like a CTV private marketplace sort of negotiated deal execution in this ecosystem that's evolving rapidly to more of an open web style. But
yeah, I mean, I think only a tiny subset of digital out of home isn't made available programmatic today, and the reason it's not made available is probably down to some sort of technical CMS issue that needs upgrading over time. I mean, actually, Neil would be a great person to ask this. Neil.
Neil, pull up a
Neil.
chair.
So Outfront have the MTA contract, a bunch of other contracts, and there's a plethora of digital opportunities. Most of them today are accessible programmatically, but some are en route, right? Like the in-car digital signs. Like, that's quite hard to do, and it's on the pathway. But I think, generally speaking, we're going to get access to every single screen. There isn't a commercial reason why. There isn't a philosophical reason why. It tends to be technical.
They would want to be, right? Why
Yeah.
would they want
Oh,
just
absolutely.
easier monetization?
And to Dave's point, we're making progress because the cars are starting to happen. You're absolutely right. And now we got members like United Airlines and DirecTV on planes. And that's technically a little more complicated, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
And it's only a technical stop because there's no reason not to. And I don't know if you want to contribute to that, Neil.
I mean, specific to malls, I would say I wonder how much of it is impacted by what happened to Lightbox. And now, like, mall media was consolidated. Hello. Mall media was relatively consolidated, and now I think it's a little splintered more. And actually, probably Alex is the person who should really be talking about this.
Thank you, Neil.
Hello.
No.
We're actually, all the screens, Simon Properties can take programmatic now. And yes, we have Lightbox come in and go out, but we've taken all that inventory back on, and now we're back up and running programmatically across the entire screen network that Lightbox had, and that goes across Brookfield, Mesa Ridge, and all of those. So everybody's back on and running. We absolutely are programmatic enabled. I do have a question. Can I keep going? I actually struggle more than anything around brands looking at out-of-home or industries and that they've never even thought of coming in the out-of-home space, specifically like pharma. So what would you say from a publisher standpoint, like how do we address those trusts, as you guys said, and what can we share with them that could potentially make them look at digital out-of-home in a more consistent way and start putting budgets together overall?
I can take a stab at this because we've actually run quite a lot of pharma campaigns over the years, and they are very idiosyncratic. They're using different things to target in the first place. There's the privacy involved in pharma is a lot greater. But I think the hardest thing to manage is the kind of the legalese, whatever that's called, the PSA bit at the beginning. The way that we've cracked it is to run 13 and in some case 60-second video ads, where in a way it's just like a TV ad, often without the volume. So we've done quite a few of those. But you're right. Like I think it's at the beginning of the journey with pharma. It's not yet fully fully out there. I once saw an ad for an antiretroviral HIV drug on a static one on a bus shelter, and you had to step into the bus lane to read all of the I'm like, I don't know what's more dangerous.
And then you got hurt in the bus lane.
Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely a sort of experience that we have to go on and try and get that creative right.
Alex, it is starting to happen.
I think that's where we're also falling short, is that programmatic, it's so like, if I want to work with Place Exchange, we obviously have somebody internally who's working with Place Exchange. How do we, because we can tie that, right? The ISIs is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So there might not be a digital part of it, but we can add to the static part of it to make sure that the consumer who's in front of that screen and see that has access to it. So it's how do we partner together more with the publishers and realize the spaces that we're in that may change the way that we actually get them to say yes. And it's not just pharma, right? It's insurance. It's a lot of these different brands that we've never been able to kind of crack.
So the way that we're set up, we actually have like the Circle of Life. Danny Orr, who used to work at Lightbox, is a pharma expert that works for us and works directly with the brand. So like he's a good person to connect with, and we have sort of similar people who have similar focuses on different verticals. So it's kind of like a practical way to work with us, I think.
I think it's a good idea though, Alex, thinking about what formats are best for specific verticals.
Yeah.
And then from there, if the owners of those formats want to participate with certain verticals, they're going to need to evolve their experiences and their screens.
Right.
It's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Alex,
Thank you, guys.
Lamar has actually assigned people just for pharma, and I'm happy to introduce you to them, and we all work together. Yeah, and by the way, the great opportunity of pharma is twofold. One is that administration is threatening to take pharma off of broadcast television, and that opens up a huge swath of opportunities for video screens. And the second part is the CPMs are really good on pharma, so if you can generate some of those high CPMs, but I'll introduce you to her.
Maybe related, I'm wondering from publishers' perspective, is there trends from the demand side? If we were to build more screens, where will they go fastest? Like where's the clients willing to spend money? Is it video? Is it static? Is there a certain format size? Does screen size matter in store versus what we call the out-of-home panels or the urban panels? I think obviously the transit's setting the tone. We're seeing the malls kind of have similar formats. So that familiarity probably, I expect, will make it easier to buy. Is there an industry suggestion in terms of like new panels, if we could put them in, which ones be fastest to revenue?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, where the size, to your second question, that relates to the environment. So in an elevator, you don't need a big screen because you're really right in front of the screen. Of course, it's different on the highway. So size matters relative to environment, to answer your question on that. And then where the screen opportunities are is on the daily journey, the path to purchase, and increasingly more at the point of purchase. That is really, when I go back before what I said, WPP is calling it a $180 billion business, chasing 15% of retail purchases online. If we can move those screens to on the path to purchase in front of the stores and in the stores, that is a huge opportunity that's starting to happen, and we're seeing a lot more investment in that area for just those reasons.
Dave, I'd imagine Place Exchange has a really good lens on demand coming into the SSPs. What are you guys seeing?
So large format is still the majority of spend, 40% of spend. Video-enabled screens are growing too from a much lower base. It's all growing. I think there's a place for all of it, right? Because we've talked about it today, like consumers are moving through these experiences, and not just in a physical world, on their laptops and on their devices as well. So if you've got a great location, you've got a great experience, it's going to work. I think probably deploying TV-sized screens is going to be less expensive than buying large formats. But it's all growing, and it's all part of this story.
It's a great place, and it's a great title, Place Exchange. That's the name of his company.
Rosie, in all seriousness, you mentioned before, I think, like that this is a place where you want to stand out, right? So, I mean, I also think that whenever I see like on a truck like I did today, or something, a placement that's on the floor and in a busy mall, and I'm actually, like those kinds of, do you think that that's high value, an opportunity, like when you see like an innovative format through digital out of home?
I mean, certainly there's going to be, again, like innovation and trying new formats and trying to put screens on things you never thought to put a screen on. You know, we're not the format building side of that. We're not a media owner, but I think our part to play in that is to help media owners and companies like Place Exchange
And new formats.
understand what works, which formats do work, right? So over time, like the truck around town, like their goal wasn't for you to go take a picture of it. Their goal is for you to take an action that, you know, gets that business a real outcome. So I think the novelty piece is fine, but the ones that are going to sustain and work and be the ones that people are going to pay money for over a longer period of time are the ones that actually work and actually drive outcomes, and that's going to be time tested. I think we're going to see some wild examples of new formats, and then the crazy ones that were just novel will fall away, and the ones that work will stay.
I'd like to talk to some of the innovations and formats. And by the way, I tried to take a picture of that. My cab was going too fast coming down Fifth Avenue. And I saw that, and I was going to take a picture, and by the time it was there. But to that point, we have a division within DPAA called MUHA. Does anybody know what that stands for? Tell us.
Yes, moving out of homelessness.
Exactly. And that's because there's been great drivers, excuse the pun, but the people driving around. And the reason for that to some degree is you think about festivals or fairs or places where screens don't exist, or it's difficult to get city permits to put them in. You can just drive a screen to a place, to an event, to a music festival. So that is a growing area because of that. Oh, and by the way, in terms of other kind of formats and just technology, we have some wonderful 3D members that can produce 3D now, anamorphic on any screen, no matter the size, no matter the place. And then we've got some wonderful hologram members. And, you know, and certainly Alex has some holograms in the malls there. And those are other really new, interesting ways and places to communicate brands, to communicating to consumers.
I don't know how quick, but so Insights platform, very interesting. I think if I'm a marketer, I want to know how to spend my money in the wisest way, right? But if I'm a marketer and I have my own CRM data, could I theoretically upload my CRM data to learn behaviors about my audience, about the audiences and the CRM data that I do have, as a part of Insights? Is that something that's, you know, possible? Because at the end of the day, like, I want to know where my audiences are going to be able to market to them in the right places for digital out of home, you know.
Yeah. I know you. Kush is one of our best salespeople at GroundTruth, so find him later.
This wasn't a planted question.
No, I love it. It's a smart question, and it occurred to me while you were speaking that the insights that we give could also help brands determine where people are going and where to place digital out of home. Which, but Matt, I think maybe that CRM question is one for you.
It's not theoretical, right? We do that. We can take in CRM data, match it through our device graph on email or MAID or any other kind of identifier. And then find adjacent audiences that they are, you know, have an affinity towards, and surface that in the Insights platform. So we can not only ingest that data, but we can augment it with our own data that we see across all the campaigns we run. So yeah, not theoretical at all. Kush?
That was a great one. I think that might be all the time we have. Speaking of ingesting, I think I see some really great food back there. But please, you know, thank you all so much. This was a really great conversation, great event. So thank you.
Thank you.